The cast and guests of Inside IOST do not intend to convey investment or financial advice. Please do your own research before choosing to buy or sell any digital assets or cryptocurrencies. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first edition of Inside IOST. This is going to be a weekly show that delves into all the latest and greatest from the IOST blockchain protocol. We're talking about all the latest dApps, all the latest tech updates, and whatever other news might be happening in this space. I am here joined by my co-founders and the founding partners of the Leobi node, which, as of just yesterday, has been elected. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get into all that and more. First of all, guys, what qualifies us to be sitting here and talking to our audience about this?
I'm a developer. I've been a developer for years. I'm into blockchain protocols. I have a series on Medium called the Ethereum Challengers. I like Ethereum. I'm involved in EOS. I've been to EOS hackathons, writing EOS dApps. I'm excited about IOST. I think it has big potential in the blockchain development space.
And Pete, you actually wrote an Ethereum Challengers article that was all about the IOST and how it relates to other things. We're going to dive into that as well on this episode. I'm excited to get into it. Pete K here. I don't think you mentioned your name, but that's fine.
That's fine.
We're also here with Mr. Josh Bryant. Josh, why don't you tell the folks out there a little bit about yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Josh. I spent the last year in a blockchain startup. Loved it. Before that, I was in the corporate world for many years in innovation roles and as a product owner. So super excited to be starting up this node with my fellow founders here.
Excellent. And my name is Evan Schindler. You might recognize me from such programs as the Roundtable, which covers all kinds of cryptocurrency happenings, news events, a bunch of other scalable type protocols that are running dApps, Tron, EOS, pretty much whatever else is going on in the news. A bit about my background. I'm not sure if I've ever mentioned this on any videos before. I have worked basically in startups ever since I graduated from school. I was in a Series C funded startup that was actually funded by MasterCard that was all about payments and payments processing. From there, I started my own company that did QR payments with POS terminals and things like that. And through ICO Alert, where I met these two fine gentlemen, I was able to dive into the blockchain space. So now we've come a long way since then. It's been about a year that we've known each other. And IOST came along. Now, Pete, I want to dive into your Ethereum Challengers article.
Sure.
Because we're all here. We're going to talk about IOST on this show. It's going to be a weekly recurring thing. And after I read your article, I was obviously more informed about it. And so what's walk me through the article and kind of what separates IOST from some of the other big name protocols that we're seeing out there right now.
Sure. I've been talking about a lot of the protocols, and one of the big emphases that all of these protocols have had, except for maybe Ethereum Classic, has been scalability, right? Because everyone knows that Ethereum is having some trouble with scalability. I think it's overstated a little bit. There's things you can do, but if you've sent an Ethereum transaction, you were just telling me the other day, Ethereum was taking more than an hour to send?
Yeah.
Because you didn't pay enough gas fees or whatever. And that's because it's at double digits or even single digits sometimes, transactions per second. IOST claims up to 100,000 transactions per second right now. That's really not like the thing about IOST though, because they're all trying to do that. What really sets IOST apart is that they're beating most of the other protocols to the punch. We're not going to see Cardano out for a couple of years. EOS has launched, and EOS is a major competitor. I'm actually involved with it. But IOST is ready with $50 million or so of venture funding to put in a versatile virtual machine that developers can hop on right now. They've been developing on. We're ready for Mainnet launch February 25th. I'm excited because IOST is a scalable yet decentralized platform that is launching now. You're not going to buy into it and maybe see a dApp in 2 or 3 years. It's coming to the field. It's only the fourth protocol that will run dApps that's out there. We've seen Ethereum launch, we've seen EOS launch, we've seen Tron launch, and now there's IOST, and it's ready to fight.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about it. And if you're watching at home, I will put a link into Pete's Ethereum Challengers in the description below. Definitely be sure to check out that article and all his other articles as well. It's a really informative batch that you've authored there, Pete.
Oh, hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
So one of the things about IOST is that their founding team is from China, and it seems to be a really hot thing going on in China right now and in a lot of the other Eastern countries, which as founders of the Leobi node, we are trying to really bridge that divide between the East and the West. And you see this with a lot of different blockchains and a lot of different dApps out there. They'll get really popular in the East or they'll get really popular in the West. And there's a lot lost in translation there, which is understandable. I actually just spent my Chinese New Year in China with my wife and my wife's family. She's from a small city called Juji, which is in the Zhejiang province. And for you guys, I brought you back a little special treat.
All right.
Actually from China. So this right here is called Baijiu. And for anyone that has been to China or is familiar with China, they're laughing right now because this stuff's pretty potent. Now, my wife's mom is actually, I guess you could call her a moonshiner, for lack of a better term. And she mixes some of her own home recipes together to make this baijiu. This particular kind, she mentioned to me was medicinal. So it gets you drunk and it cures your ailments at the same time. And I tested it quite a bit and it seemed to have worked. So as sort of an homage to the founders of IOST and, Chinese culture, and kind of a celebration of the kickoff of our node and of this show, I'm going to pour you guys up some here. We're going to pour a small amount, and then we're going to do this live on the air.
Resisting the urge to say kampai because that would be inappropriate.
What language is kanpai?
I think it's Japanese.
Yeah, so gunbei is actually gunbei. So cheers, guys, to IOST, to the mainnet launching, to Leobi being elected as a node, and gunbei.
Gunbei.
What do you think?
Strong.
It's closest to of the common liquors over here. It's closest to tequila.
Yes, that's definitely it. And what's funny is
it's good.
When my wife first tried tequila, she said that tasted like baijiu. So yes, it does taste a lot like tequila. So anyway, moving right along now that my notes are completely soaked in Chinese liquor. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the dApps that are out right now. And of course, IOST is still running on ETH, but when Mainnet launches, it's going to be interesting to see how they transition into the Mainnet. Josh, you had talked earlier about both Berminal and DDEX. And Berminal you're both familiar with. You both kind of use that on a daily basis, so I'll let you both go on that. And then DDEX, Josh, you specifically were very interested in how the IOST token is going to function within that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both apps. I've been using Berminal for a while. I go in there every day just to get news on the crypto space. They have sort of their own commentary on it, and they just have headlines from across the industry. And I just scroll. I like the interface, how it moves, how I can quickly get access to new information. And you can pick out specific coins that you're interested in and focus in on just those things. But I think it's a great news site. So I'm really happy that it's on this. It's going to be on the IOST blockchain. DDEX, I found when we were at ICO Alert, and I was looking for a DEX, and I found this one. And again, I really liked the interface. I thought it was very clean, very smooth, very easy to use. The type of interface that will draw more people to it. Like, I think one of the reasons that Apple became popular over time is because the interface, the interface was really important to them. That's what people see. And I think it's a great interface to use. You can keep your crypto on your own device, on your Ledger or on your Trezor, and plug it right in, and you're able to trade from your device without putting it out there on an exchange. Unfortunately, I tried it recently. I couldn't access it here from the U.S., so I think they may have cut off the U.S. for the time being, maybe for some regulations. Hopefully that'll change in the future, and I'm hoping that in future episodes of Inside OST that we'll get on guys from both Berminal and from DDEX, because I'd love to talk with them more about their roadmap. I think they're great apps. Excited about those and other dApps that'll be coming in the future on the blockchain.
One of the things about Berminal is that it's also trying to build other apps, right? They're trying to build a whole content ecosystem. You've noticed the brief ad that they have for their maybe Vine replacement. It's like a short form video. Because Vine, they're bringing Vine back from the dead, right? Rest in peace. And it's going to use the Berm token. So I think they have plans to build a whole content ecosystem, which is something that we know is one of those use cases we all want for blockchain, is more decentralized, censorship-free content. Excited about that. Yep.
Yeah, and I got to say, Josh, I strongly agree with you that when you use a product and it has that smooth interface, that really is the thing that kind of catches your attention and keeps you coming back. So it's super important to see that, and it's something that we're starting to see more and more with, the Trons and the EOSs, and hopefully with IOST. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how these dApps transition from the ERC20 token based model. Well, I guess with Berminal, really, that's the only one that's using that now, into the mainnet IOST. And as Inside IOST goes on, we're gonna definitely get some of those dApp developers on the show. Try and interact with some of the other nodes. I know that just off the top of my head, I saw that there's a node running out of Harvard University. So my wife's in Boston all the time. Her company's based out of Boston. So I'll be interested to see if I can get a hold of those guys or those guys and gals and check out what they're doing, because that's an interesting little project going on. So moving along here. I wanted to also talk about how voting is working. Pete, you did a little intro video on how to actually vote.
Right.
But there was a little bit of some questions, because there's actually rewards for voting. And you get your reward based on when the node actually produces a block.
Right. And it's not like EOS. This is why IOST claims to be more decentralized than EOS. And of course, we'll see how that works out in practice. But in EOS, the top 21 nodes produce blocks. The others don't. The others may get rewards, but they don't produce. On IOST, if you're elected, you produce a block. There are 72 elected nodes right now, which means there are 72 block producers. They produce blocks, randomly in proportion to the amount of votes they have. So all the nodes get rewards, and all those rewards get 50% shared with the voters. If you vote for Leobi as an IOST node, right, the node gets rewards to support things like the node and the podcast and the interviews and our developer outreach program and dApp development and other things we'll be doing here at Leobi. But that's half of the rewards. The other half go to the good people who voted for the Leobi node. That applies no matter what node you vote for, and it works out to the rewards being the same. Because if you vote for a node that has more votes, they get picked more often to get that reward, but there are more voters for them. So it balances out completely. You can vote for the node in 72nd place as long as they're elected, and you'll still get the same rewards on average as if you voted for the number 1 place.
So it's almost like
you were going to take that.
Sorry. No, I think that's a really important point. And something I really like about this ecosystem is a lot of these DPoS blockchains I've seen in the past, they really put an incentive to vote on the largest node. So the rich get richer, right? But with this system, it doesn't really matter which node you vote for, you're going to get the same reward. So you have an incentive to vote for nodes that are working for you, right? That are producing content that you enjoy, that are building dApps that you like. So the incentive is to vote for people who are contributing to the ecosystem, which I think is where the incentive should be.
Yeah. And it's going to be kind of a matter of preference, I guess. If you want to vote for those nodes that are higher up, you probably get rewards more often, but they're going to be smaller. Whereas if you vote for those niche nodes that are maybe scrounging right near the bottom, right at the cutoff, kind of like Leobi is for now, won't be for long, you'll get bigger rewards, but they'll be spread out a bit more. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Interesting to see also how the nodes come up with strategies to extra incentivize the people that are voting for them. And it's gonna be kind of a new experience, because EOS was very explicit about not doing that. Is that correct when they launched?
The current ethos, disclosure, I guess, I'm also on the Everything EOS podcast. I think that multiple platforms can win, right? I mean, we've got Windows and Linux and Mac OS, to use an analogy, running, right? And they're still running, and they're finding new venues. Like Linux has found the Android phones. It's now running on that.
It's good competition.
Yeah, right? So, and we'll all learn from each other in this ecosystem, especially with things being open source. But anyway, I'm on Everything EOS. And what you said is true, that there's kind of an ethos here in the United States that block producers should not incentivize voters. They shouldn't give them kickbacks or benefits. That's kind of changing because China Chinese nodes have such a big part to play now in the ecosystem, and they're less hesitant about rewarding voters. So I think soon on EOS, we'll see that. But on IOST, it's outright encouraged, right?
Right.
50% of votes. If you vote for good content, we'll reward you. If you vote for good dApps, you'll get rewarded. The voters get rewarded, not just the block producers.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Just as a reminder, when does the mainnet drop? What is the date?
February 25th.
February 25th. So that's coming up fairly soon.
Which means if you want to get in on the rewards, the early bird rewards for voting, you've got to do it soon.
Right. Yes. And the rewards accumulate daily. So once you lock in your votes, then you actually accumulate more IOST depending on how many votes you've cast. Your tokens do get locked up for a certain period. I think it's until March 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the interesting thing, and the thing that when I first heard about IOST that I liked that they did, was that not only is it voting for a BP or a node like it was with EOS, but it's also the way to swap over to mainnet, which was when the EOS blockchain launched, we were all worried about the swap. Everybody had to make sure that they got the swap right, but the voting kind of came secondary. It was like, I don't really care. I just want to make sure I have my tokens.
Well, remember that thing, the mainnet couldn't even launch until 15% of tokens had voted?
Right.
Or the blocks couldn't start. That's not a concern. In fact, we've already had more than 10% of the supply vote because they've opened up this early bird voting on IOST. So we're going to start mainnet with voting already in place and votes already in place.
Yeah, I like the way they did it. It's going to be a nice, hopefully smooth transition over to the mainnet. We'll have to find out.
There'll always be things that, come up that we don't expect, and just don't panic, right? EOS is running fine, but if you remember back in June, there was FUD to the sky out in the news media, like EOS has failed, it's a catastrophe. They had some bugs to work out, and they think they still do. IOST might run into a thing or two. We need to be patient.
Yeah.
Super common with new technology too, right? Like you get that innovation trigger. And when I was in the corporate world, we were always had Gartner research in there. We talked about the Gartner hype cycle, right? Mm-hmm. So you get that innovation trigger. Things go to the very top of sort of inflated expectations, right? And I think about late 2017, early 2018, at the very top of the bubble. And then the crash, right? And then it comes down into the trough of disillusionment where everybody's like, oh, it's never going to work, right? I don't see how this is going to happen. But then over time, you get that slope of enlightenment, right? And I think that's where we're headed here, that slope of enlightenment where the better projects are going to succeed and show their value until you get up to that plateau of productivity, as Gartner would call it.
I think that's what we should have called the show, Josh.
The plateau of productivity?
No, the slope of enlightenment.
Maybe we should.
Yeah, it's the slope of enlightenment. Welcome back to Inside IOST, the slope of enlightenment. So anyway, I guess just one more little note here. We wanted to talk about, this is apparent with really anything in life. Anytime you're doing anything financially, just to be careful of scams out there. Mm-hmm. Pete, you mentioned specifically there's a Telegram group out there that's not legit, that has a bunch of members in it.
Oh, well, the legit Telegram group will have posts every once in a while that says, click here for IOST airdrop and things like that. Bots coming in. There's no IOST airdrop. Don't look for an IOST airdrop. The only way to get IOST rewards right now is to either engage in the official IOST bounty program or to go to the official voting portal at iost.bis.com. And if you're not sure about any of those, go to the iost.io website and follow official links to get to these official programs. Don't take people up on Telegram who say there's an airdrop. Go to this site. They're just trying to steal your stuff. They're trying to steal your information. They're trying to steal your tokens. There's even an unofficial IOST token announcements Telegram out there. It has 40,000 followers. Maybe a bunch of bots, but there's people joining this Telegram thinking it's iOS official announcements. And it's not. And they might drop some announcements for a while, but eventually they're going to start dropping scam links because that's how these people operate. Be very careful. Remember that everyone's out there to try to steal your money, except for us here at Leobi. And like anything, do we need to give a not financial advice disclosure? Probably.
Yeah, I'll do that at the beginning, or we can do it right now. This is obviously not financial advice. Nothing here should be misconstrued as investment advice.
Right. We might not even be down at the trough yet.
We may not be.
There might be still a ways to go. So never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Excellent. So, Josh, Pete, any other sign-off messages before we kind of wrap up episode 1 here of Inside IOST?
Super excited to be starting up this node here, working with both of you and helping the IOST community get off the ground here. Mainnet starting here on the 25th. It's a big deal. It's a big event. A lot of preparation has gone into this. And I think these blockchains are going to revolutionize the space. So super excited to be a part of this.
I love technology. I was on the ICO Alert interview with Jimmy Zhang. Jimmy is just this enthusiastic guy. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of interviews with him. And he just really enthusiastic about the space. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. And ever since then, I've kept my eye on IOST. And I think it's a great addition to this selection of platforms we have. It promises to be scalable and yet more decentralized. Guys like us can start a node. Do you think we could start an EOS block producer? Probably not as easily, right? And I mean, watchers, viewers out here could start a node, and I like that. It's really the ethos, the spirit of blockchain, to be as decentralized as possible, and that's what IOST is going for.
Yeah, I love it. So for Josh Bryant, for Peter Kay, I'm Evan Schindler. This has been Inside IOST. We'll see you next week, folks.